Dracula. A moment ago, I stumbled upon a most amazing phenomenon. Something so incredible, I mistrust my own judgment. Look.
Dracula. The very mention of the name brings to mind things so evil, so fantastic, so degrading. You wonder if it isn't all a dream, a nightmare.
Rats. Rats. Thousands. Millions of them.
But no, this is no dream. This is Dracula, the original terrifying story of a maniac and a man who lived after death, lived on human blood, took the form of a vampire bat, and lured innocent girls to a fate truly worse than death.
Dracula? Oh, what's he done to you, dearie? Tell me.
He came to me. He opened a vein in his arm, and he made me drink.
Horror Hounds, welcome to episode 11 of the Black Sunday Tapes Classic Horror. I'm going to just announce it off the top here. We are back with what will be an 8-part series where, just in time for Halloween season, we are going to cover the Universal Monsters. So that means we are kicking off with 1931's Dracula. Michael, I believe this is the first time you had seen the 31 Dracula.
It absolutely was, and to be honest with you, I think 6 of these 8 are going to be first times for me because I'm one of those dudes. I was just familiar with it, and then when it finally came time to where I was like, I need to do this. You know, I'm in Hollywood-ish area, so I was always trying to wait to go see him in the theater. A couple times I tried to do that. I was either working, I didn't have transportation, or I was like, yeah, and it was sold out or got canceled for some reason.
Yeah.
So it was just those conspiratorial, nonsensical things. But it now feels like the right time to just go for it. But yeah. So
well, I'm excited to jump into these. I'm excited for you to finally get your teeth into, no pun intended, finally get your teeth into the Universal Monsters. We're kicking off with Dracula. As I said, this was the first in the run of Universal Monster films, but definitely the first in the run that we're doing. For me, it's the lesser of the 8. I would say this is my least favorite of all 8.
Okay.
Not that I don't like it in any way, shape, or form. I just feel like out of the 8 we're going to cover, this is certainly the most dated. At the time, this was a hit. It was a huge hit for Universal. But there were people that thought it was a bit goofy at the time. So if people think it's goofy in 1931, there are some people that are definitely going to think it's goofy in 2020. I think
that's
like
part
we
of
always
the
say,
charm, though.
yeah, right. That's what I was just going to say. I like we always say, part of the charm is going back and watching these films in the mindset of the day they were made. So with that said, first time you would watch it, what's your thought?
Off the top, the standout for me has to be Renfield. That guy was, I could not have been happier with his performances. every one of them, from up top where it's just the back and forth with the villager, up there, yeah, the castle, yes, yes, like dude, yes, that's where I'm going. Can we stop having this conversation? Drive, you know?
Yeah.
He's
Definitely the MVP of this film.
Oh,
I would say that if anything in this film holds up, and anything in this film, I mean, there's a lot in this film that influenced horror and cinema going forward, which, you know, we'll really dig into. But Dwight Frye as Renfield is incredible. I went back the other night and watched it. I mean, I've seen this film quite a few times, but every time I go back, I'm not going back for Bela Lugosi. I'm going back for Dwight Frye. Like, Dwight Frye is just so good as Renfield. So good. I just love him in this film. I would love to have seen more of him in this film. I would love to have seen the film
Yeah.
told from more of his point of view the whole way through. I know he like comes in and out, but in terms of like story structure, I would have really loved to have them to have set it up from his point of view for all three acts because he's great,
Yeah.
right? It's just amazing.
I mean, there's a gajillion different retellings of this movie, so I guess we just need to make that one now.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, yeah. This. I mean, let's touch on that for a little bit. So, this film had been in the works for about 15 years at Universal when Universal was first set up. Obviously, silent film era. They wanted to make a silent film version of it. We obviously do have that, but not by Universal. Nosferatu, which we will be covering at a later date.
Oh
That
yeah.
was kind of the first telling of Stoker's Dracula. However, they didn't have the rights to tell that story, so
Well,
that's why he's not called Count Dracula. And they actually got in a lot of trouble for that. But blah 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 blah. We'll save that for that podcast. Didn't get to make it in the silent era. Finally, come to the sound era, and you know this is a few years after sound had become a thing in Hollywood, and that definitely plays into the film. There's hardly, you know, there's scenes that could be silent film scenes in this, and it was a hit for them. It wasn't the hit that Frankenstein become. Frankenstein was the juggernaut that launched everything. But yeah,
Okay.
Dracula was a huge hit, man.
That makes
And
sense.
Dracula really cemented Universal as the horror studio.
Well, okay, quick sidebar then. Like,
Yeah.
since you know so much about it, there was one thing I didn't get a chance to answer for
Okay.
myself in the research, which was that giant castle. Was that set that massive, or was that pylon a clever way to split an image?
The castle, so it's a combination. So
Okay.
yeah, so the castle itself is a painting, and amazing effect. Really, the sets were massive. They built huge, ginormous sets in this. So much so that when filming was done, Universal didn't knock them down, and they actually reused the sets for I think about 20 years afterwards.
Really?
They kept they were gorgeous. They were absolutely massive, but
Yeah.
the sets are extended via painting. Yeah, which is again a technique that had been around before Dracula, but was used to full effect in Dracula and become a big deal in Hollywood after that. But yeah, set wise, absolutely incredible. But it is enhanced with some gorgeous paintings. Really, really
Well,
gorgeous paintings.
okay, just specifically though, what I'm talking like the staircase, like that's kind of what.
What,
Am I making
the
sense?
staircase right at the start when Renfield turns up?
The Yeah, and Dracula's coming down, he's going up, and
Yeah,
that
that's
giant, is that all
that's a
one
set.
piece, or
Yeah,
is
that's a
that
set. Yeah,
that's one set? Jesus
yeah, that's a
Christ,
set.
yes.
Yeah,
See, that's what I was hoping was the answer,
yeah, that's a
because it
set,
looked,
and
yeah,
the giant spider webs as well. Oh,
yeah.
that's all real. That was
Apparently, they just threw like rubber cement around
rubber
with a
cement.
spinning
Yeah,
device. Yeah,
they shot rubber cement out of. I can't think what like the kind of contraption was, but it was like a gun type contraption, and then they just shoot
yeah,
the rubber cement out, and it amazingly comes out like a giant spider web. But
yeah.
yeah, like all that was for the most part, all of that is real. All of that is real. Yeah, I think the shot that comes just before that, where he is walking in, there is that really wide shot of the staircase, and then you get the rest of the room. I
Right.
believe that's a combination, but the
Okay.
staircase
That may.
itself,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, the staircase itself is a full set, and then obviously at the end, more within the tomb or entering the tomb, you have an even bigger staircase where you see Dracula enter the top. Renfield tumbles down it again, all a set.
Oh man. Speaking of the crypt, like the crypt was just so great, and what one of the things I loved the most was the just I can't. Were armadillos seen a lot in
Uh,
1931? Like I
so
was like, why are there armadillos? And then I
actually,
found out.
I have an answer for you. I have an
Yeah.
answer.
Okay.
So
What you
oddly enough, a lot of what the sets, the shadows, the big windows, the creepy crawlies, all stuff like that had nothing to do with horror before or film. Within horror film, none of that had anything to do before Dracula. Dracula really brought a lot of that stuff in. A lot of the iconography that we associate with horror today and especially putting it all together. Like some of that stuff had been done. Obviously, Nosferatu had done the Long Shadows and stuff like that. But in terms of bringing everything together,
So
as
like
well as the
bats,
creepy
bats weren't
corpses.
bats
Yeah,
didn't equal creepy before this.
right, exactly. The
Okay.
armadillos, stuff like that. This was all designed to really create an atmosphere. The reason for the armadillos is back in 1920s, 1930s, armadillos were discovered quite frequently within graveyards.
Yeah.
And the reason they believe this, which isn't true, is they believe that the armadillos would eat the remains of people within their coffins. This
I read this,
this since then has been proved not to be the case. But they were put into the film because of that, because people back in 1920 and 1930 associated armadillos being quite macabre, considering they were discovered around graveyards all the time. So put them in. Why not? And then there's other creatures, like there's
The Jerusalem beetle, for Christ's sake.
There you go. Yeah, but that
had to be the first time that was in cinema, right?
It is, but I believe that wasn't so much by design. There was, because they shot in California.
Exactly.
There was a lot of beetles and a lot of like crickets and stuff like that were just native to the area. But again, why not put them in?
But I mean, just the whole Halloween 3 connection of it all. Also, like, why did it have its own tiny coffin?
Oh yeah, no, yeah. I always think.
Oh, I had to laugh. I laughed quite heartily when that happened.
I always think that, yeah. The funny thing is, it's not. I think if you really look at it, it isn't a coffin, is it? But because it's cut in the way it is with them coming out of the coffins, it definitely looks like it's coming out of a coffin, and I love that bit every time. Oddly enough, it's one of those things I always forget about. And then when I go back for a rewatch, as soon as it's about to happen, I'm like, oh, here it comes.
Right, yeah.
Coming out of this little coffin. Yeah. Really cool, man. What did you think of, so you touched on that, like the crypt and them coming out. What did you think of the setup of that and the lighting? And obviously you saying you've seen parts, you've seen images, you've seen the iconic images of Bela Lugosi. The first one being
surprised.
In that crypt, right?
Oh, well, yeah. But I was surprised just the, like meme culture, if you will. Like how much, like when it happened, it was like, I didn't realize that it was just an exact screen grab. You know what I mean? Like I've seen so much imagery, like the like Renfield at the bottom, like looking up from the galley. Like I just like that's one of my favorite shots of the whole film. But then just being like, oh yeah, no, I'd seen that like a bunch of times. There's just something about light, like if you don't have color to play with, you got to figure out how to make things look interesting. They play with scale and they use light to not just guide your eye but help with the scale. And I don't know, like just there was so much in it. I mean, it's 74 minutes and it felt long at times, but that was also like purposeful.
Well, like I said, it doesn't. There are certain aspects I don't feel hold up today as well as some of the other films we're going to cover. This is definitely one of them. It's one of the shortest films in the series, but it definitely feels like one of the longest. Because, well, I feel part of that is probably because this version of Dracula isn't so much based on the book, though they had to obviously get the rights to the book to make the film because of the character names and the setup. This is basically a recreation of a play that predates it, which Bela Lugosi starred in as Dracula and then heavily campaigned to get this role. This is why he's in this film. It was actually going to go to a bunch of other people before Bela Lugosi, but he was very adamant he was going to reprise his theatre role as Dracula. But because it's based on a theatre play, back in the day, great, that works really well because that's what people are used. People were used to theatre more than cinema back in the days. Cinema was an even more of a treat than going to the theatre. So it kind of works back then. Now it's the other way around. Like we're very sport for choice with cinema, and I feel like some of that very slow building, very dead scenes in a way don't really hold up as well. But then that is cut with people like Dwight Frye, who I think do hold up today. Yeah, Dwight Frye is incredible, man. So
and then that orderly that sees to him when he's at the sanitarium was my other favorite.
How good is he?
Oh,
funny.
you're a loony.
Yeah, he's awesome though. But let's touch on the cast for a bit. So we've said about Dwight Frye, obvious standout for both of us. I think as the film goes on, he just gets better and better and better. Unfortunately, he was so good in this film that for the rest of his career, he's completely typecast and didn't really play anything other than crazed maniacs. But he was bloody good at doing it. So yeah, Dwight Frye was great. Anyone else that stood out to you? Anyone else that you really like?
Well, again, I guess because of, when it was like the ladies that are there like are given nothing. Like
Of course.
the wives are kind of memorable, but they're only used twice, and they kind of arguably do nothing at all.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
They they,
Agreed.
they
Agreed.
they 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 go towards a passed out Renfield, and then they get scared away, and then that's it. That's why were
Yeah,
you
the
there?
wives definitely should have played a much bigger part, and it's not really that part of it isn't even really made clear of like why he has the wives, and then why he's going for a new wife in
Right.
England, right? That's why he's there to get another wife, but it doesn't really tell that story very well if we're honest. But I think what the actresses are given to work with, which is very limited, I actually quite like them. I think Helen Chandler,
Oh no, they were
who
great. Yeah.
who is Mina, the main female focus of the film, I think she's pretty good. And I think what she's given to work with is very little, but what she does with it, yeah, it really works for me. It really stands out. And then the obvious,
She
I mean,
stands out for me a lot more when she becomes Vamp Mina,
oh hell
which
yes, hell
yeah,
yes,
which
yeah,
you get the beginnings and the whatnot. Like it was one of those, because I love cinema like I do. Like so many films have taken the exact beats from this film. So it wasn't like anything that happened was like, oh well, I didn't see that coming. But I appreciated that. I was like, oh well, this is where it all started. Like right on, okay.
yeah, completely agree. Yeah, I completely agree. And I mean, there's a few people in the cast that are quite good, but I mean, how can we not talk about Bela Lugosi? What
Oh,
do you what did you think of his performance? Obviously, you had seen probably some of the most dramatic bits. I mean, the whole thing's dramatic, but how did that play for you?
his like one of my notes was like, man, his insanely metered performance like is just it's perfect for the character. It's perfect for the tone of what they're going for. And I can and as someone who's in love with theater, I have an undergrad degree in theater. Like the thought of seeing that exact like performance in a theater, just seeing him in front of you must have
Of
been
course.
like insane.
Yeah, you can
And
tell
so
he
like
comes from theatre, right? You can
yeah,
tell it's a
yeah,
theatre performance.
from the like the way that he mugs for the camera, because like mug for the front row, you mug for the back row, so you have to get
Yes.
big, but you don't want to go so big that you become an absolute cartoon. And
Yes.
maybe one could argue that if you look at it through today's eyes, everything he does is a cartoon, and I wouldn't be mad at that, but I would disagree with it strongly, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel in this film, as this character, it definitely comes across as very camp today. I mean, like back in the day, like I said, there were, especially in his native country,
hmm
he was kind of laughed at a little bit for his over the top antics. But I feel like as Dracula, it kind of works. And my argument would be it definitely does work because Dracula, as we know Dracula, still only exists,
because of this.
yeah, within the Bela Lugosi format of Dracula. That doesn't, we still haven't got out of that really. Like, I don't know if you saw the BBC slash Netflix miniseries of Dracula
No,
from lot.
I heard a lot of different things about it, but I didn't see it. No, should I?
It was okay. Yeah, I mean, it's worth watching. It's worth watching. It's okay. It definitely is a lot more faithful to the book
Okay.
than this film. It obviously extends the story out a lot more. It's okay. There is some good stuff in it. I don't think it comes together fully, but it does work. However, my point is Dracula in that series is still very much in line with Bela Lugosi's portrayal of Dracula, right?
Okay.
Because before that, you have Nosferatu, and that is a lot more closer. I haven't read the book in some time, so I could be way off based on this. But I believe in the book, Dracula can come across as a much more hideous figure. You don't see any of that with Bela Lugosi, right? You never see the hideous side of
Correct.
Bela Lugosi.
Yeah.
All you see
This
is
is
the
the start of the
suave.
romantic vampire. Yeah.
Yes, right, exactly. And I believe there is some of that in the book, but I believe you also get the hideous side, which you get in Nosferatu.
Yeah.
But in terms of, where we go with Dracula post 1931, that's all Bela Lugosi. Like, it can't
Yeah.
be understated what he gave to this role and vampires in general and where it went and what it become. Like, he, love or hate this performance, it's iconic for many, many reasons. It
Oh
really
yeah.
is.
It's one of those, like, you have to go in knowing that maybe it gets really like eye rolly and
Yeah.
like there's gonna be a lot of that stuff, but you need to try and realize that the reason you're doing that is because it started with what you're watching.
Yes, I completely agree. It is very much of its time, and you have to go in with a mindset. It definitely doesn't hold up as, say, Boris Karloff's Frankenstein. Like,
No.
Boris Karloff's
Yeah.
Frankenstein still holds up today. Like, that is
I
as good of
yeah,
a
no,
performance
100%.
today, as it was back in
We'll get into
Frank.
it on that episode, but I can speak
Yeah,
to how that still works in a theater.
yes, right, exactly. Bela Lugosi obviously is a little bit outdated. However, it can't be understated how dominant that portrayal of not only Dracula but of a vampire has influenced pop culture ever since. Ever since. Like, you don't get the Dracula performances that followed, but a lot of the vampire performances, right? A lot of the sexy vampire performances. The idea of being, that romantic version of Dracula or of a vampire. It don't exist without Bela Lugosi. And
No.
so much so that his performance within that vein of it being a romantic story, when this film originally come out, it was more advertised as a romantic film than a horror film.
Well, I actually I read that refers to it as a mystery.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 So it's like horror wasn't even really a thing, I
No.
guess,
No. Yeah. It's like a romantic mystery.
as such. Yeah,
Yeah. Incredible, man. Absolutely incredible.
that's just nuts. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's move on to director Todd Browning for a minute, because there's some interesting notes about Todd Browning. We obviously have covered Todd Browning's work
We have.
on Freaks early on in the podcast, which I made no secret an episode I think is a superior film to this one.
It's yeah. I
There,
don't really think they're the same category, to be honest with you.
yeah, there may be good reason for that. There are heavy rumors, maybe a bit more than rumors. Some of the cast have been known to say that Todd Browning was basically absent for a lot of this film, and it was essentially shot by the DOP. Their kind of timeline of Todd Browning's life, that kind of lines a little bit. He was a huge silent film director, very successful silent film director, worked with Lon Chaney a lot, and when Dracula was originally thought up as a property for Universal, it was thought up with Lon Chaney in mind to start. Todd Browning, I'm not sure if he was attached on that basis, but it kind of makes sense if it was. Prior to Dracula, Lon Chaney suddenly passed away. This hit Todd Browning very hard. He was abusing alcohol quite a lot. And apparently during the making of Dracula, he was quite absent. While some casts have come out and said that, from what I understand, it is mainly hearsay, it is mainly rumor, so I do want to stress that. However, I can kind of see it, because if you weigh Freaks up to this, Freaks was a film he was very involved in, a real passion project of his. The direction of Freaks, 10 times better than the direction of Dracula. But
No.
I think that's quite interesting. I think from a direction point of view, I think Dracula certainly lacks. I think from a cinematography point of view, it's flawless. It's absolutely flawless, and we'll get into
Yeah.
Carl Freund in a minute, because that guy was incredible. But in terms of direction, I do think Dracula lacks a little bit. And I did want to just touch on that because I think if you do feel that way, there is probably a good reason why that happened.
Yeah, but as you mentioned though, it's one of those that that is. I mean, you can feel that if you're into film, but I think that there's enough visually going on for most folk to kind of overlook most of that.
Yes, definitely, definitely. So on that note, let's touch on the visual aspect of it. So Dracula was the cinematographer was a guy called Carl Freund, who, again, some people believe directed most of, if not part of Dracula, which is obviously uncredited. An incredible cinematographer. He was a European cinematographer, really brought those German style of filmmaking to America. The big long shadows, the big moody sets, the fog, the smoke. This was
So much fog.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Hollywood doesn't know how to use fog anymore.
No, not like then. Yeah, you're totally right. You're totally right, man. He was a master cinematographer, and I do not say that lightly. He was the cinematographer on classics such as Metropolis.
Really?
Yeah, so again, like just incredible, but more so than that. And this was out of everything I've ever learned about Dracula or the Universal monsters, my favorite kind of bit of trivia that you end up finding out when you really dig deep on some of these people is around Carl Freund. So he was considered like a genius, an absolute genius with cinematography, and you see a lot of that in Dracula, right? So if you think about the slow pushing to build tension, the movement of the camera, there's a lot of dolly shots in Dracula, especially in that opening within the tomb, like you said.
The intro to the sanitarium where you got like a crane shot and a camera move all going on at the same time. I mean, it was I loved it. I loved it so much.
Oh man, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And he was a real master. He, like I said, he cut his teeth in Europe on films like Metropolis, which again, absolute stone cold classic and helped develop cinema. He then brought that to America, developed that in film to the point where we still use a lot of those techniques now. If you're going to build tension around a facial expression, you dolly in for a close up.
Yeah.
Very much a technique he brought to American cinema. But more so than that, he would go on DP a lot of other films. He would actually become a director himself. He is the director of The Mummy, which is a film we're going to cover in a couple weeks. Yeah, so I mean, Universal love this guy. Universal really love this guy. But Hollywood really love this guy. He went on to DP a couple of other films. He was nominated for an Oscar. He also won an Oscar. However, his biggest contribution to film, but more precisely TV, was when you think about sitcoms and you think about the way TV is shot. I'm talking Friends, Big Bang Theory, Seinfeld, right? All these films, they all look the same, right? They've all got what's called a free camera setup.
Right.
Free cameras, you get your wide, you get your mediums, you get your close-ups. Everything is universally lit. You can then put that in front of a live audience. Away you go.
Mm-hmm.
He invented that system for I Love Lucy, and
Really?
he was hired directly by the producers of I Love Lucy to develop a way that they could make a live TV show that could be edited. Because before that, you had TV shows, right? Before I Love Lucy, you had TV shows, you had a form of sitcom, but it was literally shot live, where it was a one camera where you basically just recorded on stage, and there was no cuts, there was no nothing, right? And that would have to go out live. So the way in which you could sell that and distribute that was completely different. There was nowhere near as much money in it as there was after I Love Lucy. How do you shoot a TV show where we can edit it and we can produce a show a week, put it out on TV and get it out all across the country, different time slots, make a hell of a lot of money? So he come up with that system. He come up with a camera system. He come up with the universal lighting, the way you
The
would
way
light up,
that the set is and
the way the set is,
where the audience is and everything.
the
Wow.
way that, well, they still way to do it in front of an audience. So that's the difference, right? It was, you had film not in front of an audience, single camera though, or
Right.
some films multi-camera, but not in front of an audience. And then you had TV, which could be done very quickly. Pre I Love Lucy, however, it was a one camera setup, start, finish, done. That goes out live. They wanted to develop a system that brought film to TV. How do we bring editing to TV? But how do we do it and streamline it where we can do it in a week? He come up with a camera system. He come up with the way it was lit, the way the sets would work. He was involved in it all. That system, sitcoms, the way we know what basically is American TV does not exist without Carl Freund. Like,
There it
that
is.
to me is mind blowing. That is still around today, and that is still
Yeah, it is.
the most successful way to shoot TV. Like, say what you want about sitcoms, but they are the most popular form of TV. Like, Big Bang Theory is still the number one TV show in the world. Like, Friends was the number one TV show in the world.
Yeah.
These are huge juggernaut shows, and they're so successful because they can be filmed in a way that's universal, that everyone understands, but also it can be produced very quickly at a very high standard, and you can have a TV show made a week. That is all down to the guy that shot Dracula. That is incredible to me. Absolutely
No,
fucking mind.
man, you're right. You're right. You're like from Dracula to Sheldon. There you are.
Yeah, incredible, right? Absolutely incredible. And for you guys and girls out there listening, if you get a minute, just look at the stuff he shot. Like I said, we're gonna definitely touch on some of his other work, but in terms of like cinematography, man, guy's got a list. Like, he's obviously got a hell of a lot of films before Dracula. Like, he made a lot of silent films quite quickly, no sound involved, so doesn't really
Yeah.
take that long. But in terms of other films he shot, an absolute genius. Like, he really is a genius of cinema. Like, you can't say that too much, but in terms of him, absolute genius. Absolute genius. Like I said, not only shot Dracula and what some would consider directed Dracula, also went on to direct The Mummy, which we'll get onto it, but might be a superior film. Then directed, quite a few other films. But then as a cinematographer, this is where he cut his teeth. And just made Stone Cold classic after Stone Cold classic, and just really developed cinema, developed shooting techniques that we still use today. That, like, if you want to talk about someone that writes the book on how you tell a story with film, don't look no further. Don't look no further. This guy is a real heavyweight in screen language. Is probably the best way I can put it.
Absolutely, especially if the in quote rumors of Browning kind of tipping out, then exactly what you were just saying, the way that he tells a lot of what needs to be told through camera movement, through the way that he presents happening as opposed to how it's happening.
Yeah, it's like, dude's just absolutely incredible. But there's my rant over. So yeah, dude, what else you got?
I was just like smiling the whole time I was watching it because I was glad I was finally
Of course,
seeing the full context. Because it's, I don't know, man. I don't know how many of you have been exposed to something for essentially your entire life and just avoided it for so long, and then when you see these tiny little clips that you're familiar with strung together the way they were intended to be, it's a
Yeah,
it
you're
was
like,
very
oh
interesting
damn, that's where
experience.
that's from. Oh, okay, that's where that's
Exactly.
from.
So, oh man, but like some of the stuff that I found like really interesting is, like one of my notes was, man, everybody moves so slow in this movie, and
Yeah,
then
they
but
do.
like
Yeah, they do.
then almost immediately there's some footage that was sped up, and it's the footage on the boat. And so then and I was like, what is with this? Like I took a note. I was like, why is everything so slow and then
Oh,
this
okay,
stuff
that's
so
funny.
fast? And then as I was doing my research, I found out it's because that was a bit of stock footage from a silent film
Yes.
that was shot at a different frame rate. So they just sped it up to match, and it caused the quicker motion that made me go, why? So
Yeah. Silent films, obviously they didn't have sound, so they were recorded at a completely different frame rate. And you actually see this in a lot of early cinema, where you get it in a lot of like gangster films, like early gangster films. You get it in some of the like James Cagney stuff, where they'll take shots from other films, which was very commonplace back in the day. It was a money saving method, but because they were shot for silent film, completely different frame rate, doesn't really match up. But here we are.
Right. Actually, one of the bits of trivia I found most interesting was Dracula is the first example of a female having the first spoken line in all of sound cinema.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know who that actress was?
Off the top of my head, I forget her name, but I did read it.
I can't remember the actress name, so I deeply apologize. But she was the niece of the guy that run Universal at the time.
Lemley, yeah, she's something Lemley. Yeah.
Yeah, and she was the last surviving member of the Dracula cast. She lived to be like 106, something like that.
Yeah, she died like kind of recently.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Oh,
It wasn't too long ago. It wasn't too long ago. She outlived everyone, man. I think her name was like Carla.
Yep, there it is. It's Carla Lemley or Lamel.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say that name properly, but there you go. Yeah, and she would show up at screenings and talk about the entire experience.
Yeah.
Up until almost she died, she would do that. Yeah.
She was 104. Sorry, not 106.
Oh well.
Which is still, hell of an
know,
achievement, right? I mean, bloody hell.
104.
Yeah,
Well.
only 104. Yeah. I mean, wow, what an incredible achievement. But yeah, I think that's a great bit of trivia, man. That she was the first female to have spoken word dialogue in a horror film. You know, that is really iconic when you think about it. When you consider that horror, how many great female horror characters we have, and yeah, that kind of all. I mean, she doesn't really play any more of a role in the film, but the fact that in terms of spoken word was given to her, yeah, that's incredible, man. And I mean, she has the opening dialogue of the film, right?
Yeah. So I mean, anyway,
she kicked off the whole Universal monster craze.
First line in all of the Universals.
Yeah.
All the Universal horrors. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. With the talkie era.
Also that the film didn't have a score, and actually like my girlfriend said that at one point. She's like, it's interesting that there's no score. And apparently in I think it was 99, Philip Glass actually was commissioned for a score for it, and I read a review from that premiere that said like it sucked all of the like creep and horror out of the movie. Didn't mean to, but it did.
Also, what should be noted there is there is a real lack of a score in Dracula. It also is a real lack of sound. Like sound design pops up very rarely in this film. There are scenes that could be taken straight from a silent film. But again, you've got to remember the time that this was made. This was made in 1931. Talkies had only debuted with a jazz singer in about 27, I think. So you're talking about 3 or 4 years where people that went to the cinema regularly, and you know, back in the 20s and the 30s, you weren't going to the cinema every week, you know, to see these big films. This was a rare thing. So how many films had you really seen in that 3-4 year period that had sound? Because it wasn't like sound just turned up and then they got rid of silent film. They were still making silent films into the 30s. So, you know, sound was, when sound first come about, when the jazz singer first come about, exactly like they had done with color, or more recently with 3D and stuff like, you know, they said it was a complete fad. No one's going to want to watch a motion picture with sound. Why would anyone want that? You know, it's all about silent film. So to us today, there is a severe lack of sound, there's a severe lack of score. But back in 1931, watching this film, some people may have perceived that as too much. They were walking a thin line between, you know, the real fans of silent cinema and fans that were embracing this new medium of sound. So yeah, I think that definitely has to be taken into context. If this was made in an era when they weren't making motion pictures with an abundance of sound, it was a very slow process to get the public to buy into it.
I mean, it's like all new tech. Yeah. I don't need your newfangled insert thing here.
Yeah, exactly.
And to speak to the communal aspect of cinema, again, like I read a review from 1931 of its premiere, and apparently the scene where Van Helsing rebukes Dracula with the cross, like even back then got the audience like gave a resounding cheer.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
then the fact that it was number 6 at the box office in 1931, I don't have much else.
No, I agree. Like I said, it's a nice one to kick off with. We've definitely got to kick off with Dracula, but we're definitely going to have a lot more to talk about with the other films. But that's always going to be the way, right? Because this is the one that started the trend.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there was and again, the funny thing with these films is you did have press materials, you did have stuff the studio would put out, but you didn't really have, there was no behind the scenes because that didn't exist yet. There was no market for
They
that
didn't
yet.
think they cared, yeah.
No, exactly.
They
So,
probably
and
didn't at the
also they
time,
didn't
yeah.
want to reveal it. They also didn't want to reveal
That's
that.
it,
That
yeah.
was movie magic, right? That
Right.
was, you didn't reveal that stuff. You didn't reveal how the film was made. So that was definitely a big part of it. The only thing I'll touch on, so there's the Spanish version.
Yeah.
And that's purely because Universal back in the day had a real stranglehold over the European market and the Spanish audience. But what they found was that when they went to Europe with a lot of their films, the place that they didn't really translate as well was Spain, because Spain wanted stuff spoken in their native language. So then when it comes to this film, they said, right, we'll shoot the American version, the English language version, and then we'll shoot a Spanish version, and we'll shoot it with a Spanish cast, and we'll shoot it fully in Spanish. Everyone knows that. It's quite commonplace that there's a Spanish version, which, oddly enough, is some people would consider a better version of this film. There is a reason why it might be considered a better version, though. So they were filmed at exactly the same time, and they was filmed on exactly the same sets. So what would happen is let's say the Todd Brown and Bela Lugosi team would shoot during the day. The Spanish crew would then go and film overnight on exactly the same sets, exactly the same scene that had previously been shot. However, there was a little time frame in between these shoots. So up until quite recently, really within cinema history, there was no way of looking at what you had filmed on set. You would have to go and get a rough process of the dailies, put them on a projector, and then watch them. And you would make sure, okay, we've got this. No, that didn't come out right. We're going to film that again tomorrow. So quite commonplace, that would happen all the time at studios. You would process the dailies. The main crew would go in and watch these dailies at night. The Spanish crew would sit in the screening room while they're looking at the dailies that they filmed during the day. And then they would walk out going, we can do better than that. So there are scenes within the Spanish version where they use a lot more special effects of the day. They shoot it, they use even more dramatic camera movement. They were trying to prove that they can make a better version than the American crew. Yeah, incredible, man. I love that for several. I love the competitiveness of the American crew versus the Spanish crew, but I also love just this idea of Universal deciding, let's make 2 versions of this film and let's shoot them. We'll shoot one during the day and then we'll shoot the other at night on exactly. And they were like, that wouldn't happen now, would it?
No, not at all.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting to watch from a point of view of just knowing that they were shot at the same time on exactly the same sets.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's interesting. All right, dude. For me, I think that about rounds it up.
Yeah. I think it's again, like I'm so glad that I saw it, and as long as you can go in knowing when it was made and what that means, I think you can have a real good time with it.
Of course, man. I think that's a great way to end it. It's good, man. It's good being back, week off.
Yeah,
I'm enjoying it. I am very much looking forward to diving down the rabbit hole of the Universal Monsters films. Frankenstein is up next, which is my out-and-out stone cold favourite. So, yeah, we will be gushing over that come next week. And yeah, thanks for joining us again, Horror Hounds. Until next week, stay safe.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.